您现在看到是 SLS 火箭结合猎户座太空船再次尝试发射的现场画面。今天发射的时间窗口是从美国东岸时间11月16号凌晨1点04分开始，一直到这个凌晨的3点04分，总计是2个钟头的窗口。不过刚刚听到在灌注燃料的时候是遭遇一些问题哦。那我们可以想见，原定的在1点04分要发射的时间，有可能被迫稍稍顺延。我们知道这个8月、9月、10月。SLS 火箭都因为机械设备原因，或是遇到飓风，或是热带风暴等各种的天候因素是被迫推迟。经过连日来的修理、更换零组件、改变作业程序，并通过测试，今天是再次尝试发射升空。刚才听到在这个灌注燃库 rating。也就是红色的这个小组就是解决状况的小组是进入到这个核心段底部去把一些这些连接开关再次确认跟拴紧。现在是小问题基本上解决，又重新进行燃料灌注。好的，您看到的是 SLS 火箭准备要首次发射的现场直播画面由于之前 SLS 火箭因为各种因素一再拖延所以今天在修复完成又推出放上发射台后，能否成功发射格外引人注意。今天 SLS 火箭如果发射成功，将会标志1972年人类最后一次登陆月球以来，大规模重新登月甚至登陆火星的计划自此正式展开。刚才听到指挥中心说，这个有一些这个燃料的这个泄漏小小的问题已经解决。现在上层段跟核心段都在重新继续灌注燃料我们来静待这个指挥中心的一些最新的结果。事实上，这一次阿提米丝1号任务的目的如果用比较简单的话来说，就是要验证 SLS 火箭搭配猎户座太空船这整套系统是否真的适合载人，也就是适合太空人或是航天员是安全搭乘。因为首阶段任务主要是拿来验证系统安全和强度。若是一切顺利，今天发射，整个任务的时间比前几次是缩短。这一次的任务时间会是将近26天。这次 SLS 加上这个猎户座太空船总飞行的里程估算大概有130万英里。猎户座太空船的飞行距离将超过任何可以载人航天飞行载具的飞行距离。前面几次可以说是等了非常久的时间那这一次能不能顺利发射，相信许多人都相当关心。我们来看这个目前还在继续灌注燃料，有任何最新的状况，我们随时会为您插播。现在距离这个预定发射时间开始是整整1个钟头，不过目前倒计时眼看是被迫暂时停住如果有任何最新消息，我们随时为您进行播报。 我来简单聊一下这一次的阿提米斯任务。我们刚刚前面有说过，首阶段任务最主要目的是要来验证系统的安全与强度。这一次的飞行可以说是没有载人，但是要确认整个系统未来在载人的时候是安全无虞，可以让这个太空人，也就是宇航员可以放心这个搭乘。这一次的阿提米斯第一次任务的观察重点，我个人认为是要看一下，就是说猎户座太空船在结束环绕地球任务以后，能不能成功借着星球引力的作用与服务舱的推力，从这个月球轨道成功转回地球轨道，也就是它在环绕月球之后进行这个地月轨道转移的时候，重新进入地球的轨道是否安全。另外就是要验证说，从今天发射开始一直回到地球海面，这25天将近26天时间，整个飞行环节每一步的环节是否这个衔接顺畅。第三个，我认为说，这一次发射另外一个值得观察的重点就是，最后这个猎户座能不能精准在预定的海面降落，安全收回猎户座返回舱。这个是相当重要的事情。我们知道猎户座预计差不多在12月11号是准备降落在加州圣地亚哥外海的太平洋海面。如果现在还有一些时间，我们来看一下这个整个的发射程序如果待会顺利展开倒计时的时候，在发射倒数15分钟时现场发射指挥官将会对各个任务组一个一个询问是否准备好进行发射。如果各个任务组每一个任务组都回报一切准备就绪，则会继续开始发射前的10分钟倒计时。然后进入到6分钟又会是另外一个检查点，一直到倒数1分30秒是另外一个更新的检验点。这时候如果中途喊停或是停止这个倒计时的时间不能停止太久，因为倒回去最多只能回到10分钟。若是过了1分30秒的检验点，在最后30秒还有一点机会可以将时间暂停但是一旦进入30秒的倒数时间就会交给自动发射系统，因为电脑自动接手控制，就不能回头，只能继续发射。这指挥中心可以说是相当安静现在还在这个进行燃料装填作业，无论是上层段以及核心段都在继续灌注这个液态氢、液态氧燃料。大概在刚刚17分钟前我们看到这个阿提米斯任务组的一个最新的一个更新它是说这个红色的 tin 也就是这个紧急维修小组目前是离开这个检视区。目前所有的这个液态氢在核心段跟这个上层段的燃料灌注都已经重新顺利展开，同时所监测到的这个阀门数据目前看起来都还让指挥中心满意。您现在看到的是阿提米斯1号发射任务的现场直播，这也是这个 NASA 打造SLS 大火箭第一次的尝试发射。前面几个月曾经不断的尝试，但是都因为这个器械因素或是天气状况被迫顺延，一直延到今天。好的，我们来再看一下这一次这个发射的一些相关的讯号跟资料这一次阿提米斯任务没有载人不过上面却载有这个3名被昵称作着 Moodican 的假人。这些假人有的是担任指挥官的任务，有的扮演乘客，各有不同的名字。他们身上可以说是连接一大堆的传感器NASA 希望借此了解未来真正太空人在搭乘时会面对的真实飞行状况。在这一次阿提米斯计划的发射路途中， SLS 火箭第2节脱离后，将会顺道发射10颗的立方卫星，也就是微小的卫星。这10颗微小卫星任务五花八门，从升空辐射对生物体的影响到对月球的探测都有，可以说是开展未来阿提米斯任务的尖兵。如果您现在才加进我们的直播您现在看到的是 SLS 火箭准备是结合猎户座太空船再次尝试发射的现场直播。今天发射时间窗口是从美国东岸时间11月16号凌晨1点04分开始，美国西岸时间是晚上的10点04分开始为期2个钟头的发射时间窗口。我们知道前面几个月 SLS 火箭都因为机械设备原因以及遇到这个飓风、热带风暴各种原因是被迫推迟经过不断的修理、更换零组件、改变作业程序，并通过许多的测试，今天可以说是再次尝试发射升空。
T-minus 14 minutes and counting. We have an update now on the upper stage of the Space Launch System. Currently at 75% filled. We're in fast fill for the upper stage, and currently it is 75% filled for liquid hydrogen. We're in stable replenish for the core stage, both liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. And that includes the liquid oxygen on the upper stage. Stand by, we're getting an update from the range on their issue. I'll be right back.
好的，您刚才听到的是指挥中心的 update 一些最新的这个数据跟状况啊。目前这个上层段的液态氢还在灌注当中，另外这个核心段，也就是第一节核心段的燃料也重新展开装填哦。如果刚才我听到数据没错，上层段是进行这个快速填充，目前这个填充的完成度已经达到75%。目前一些监测数据都还算在容忍值内，这算是一个好消息。
Yeah, Megan, we actually have about 10 minutes before we go into a half-hour hold. That half-hour hold is part of the L clock, and what you see on your monitor right now, I believe, is the T clock. So in about 10 minutes, we'll hold for a half hour, and currently the launch team is trying to evaluate how much of a delay may result from some issues that we've been facing over the past hour. Just to recap those, we had a leak in a replenish valve on the mobile launcher that feeds into liquid hydrogen core stage tank. That's been resolved. The leak has been fixed, and we're moving forward. Currently, the upper stage of the rocket for liquid hydrogen is roughly 70 8% at the moment. So that is tracking. Progress continues there. The core stage has been topped off, and now both liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen are 100%, along with the upper stage of the liquid hydrogen side of the equation. So we're just waiting on the complete tanking of the upper stage liquid hydrogen. Now, with regards to the range issue that we had, we just got an update from the range. The 45th Space Wing officer reporting in to the NASA test director that the Ethernet switch has been replaced. This problematic switch took down their ability to see radar from one of their assets, which is key in getting acquisition and signal for the flight termination system if it were to be needed. Of course, this is a critical system that has to be tested before we can launch. So at the moment, we're looking still at a 1:04 a.m. Eastern Time launch, but it is pretty clear from the work that is ahead that it looks like we're going to slip into that window. How much exactly, we don't have an accurate calculation from the launch team as of right now. But of course, we're anticipating that. So for the moment, you see on your clock now, we are in the T-minus 10-minute hold. We just entered that, and now roughly we're looking at 28 minutes to resume terminal count. The launch team will assess what work needs to be done, how that syncs up with the range getting back online with their equipment, and then we should have a new T0 for you soon. That's the latest from Firing Room 1 here at the Kennedy Space Center. Megan, back to you.
你刚刚听到是这个指挥中心 update 一些最新的资讯啊。目前这个提到就是倒计时的时间，因为前面受到这个单延哦，他们还正在评估哦。目前这个受到单延的时间会是有多久？目前倒计时的时间是被迫暂停，是这个 hold 住要等到稍后他们知道在预定还需要多少时间的准备才可以进行发射，会重新设定倒计时的时间。 好的，我们刚刚听到，目前倒计时的时间是被迫暂时 hold 住稍待会有更新的倒计时时间原来预定的发射时间窗口是美国东岸时间11月16号凌晨的1点04分也就是美西时间11月15号晚上的10点04分。中港台时间原本是预定在11月16号下午的2点04分，不过因为刚才在填充燃料的过程遇到一些技术上的问题，很显然这个发射时间会被迫顺延但是发射时间这一次的发射窗口只有2个小时，所以万一拖到后面所剩时间不多，今天还是有可能在发射的过程中是中途喊停会顺延到其他天再进行发射，这是目前的最新状况。好的，我们来聊一下这个阿提米斯1号任务这一次的任务主要是要验证这个猎户座太空船是否真的适合太空人安全搭乘它最主要的目的是验证整个系统的安全跟强度。原来的发射这个任务时间是比较长，甚至长到46天。但是这一次因为这一次的发射窗口整个任务时间规划是25天半，将近26天的时间。这次 SLS 加这个猎户座太空船总飞行里程大约是130万英里，猎户座太空船的飞行距离会超过任何过去载人航天飞行载具的飞行距离。我们也提到这一次阿提米斯任务是没有载真的太空人，但却载有3名被昵称作 Moonican 的假人。这些假人有不同的这个角色，有人是担任指挥官，有人是扮演成员，各有不同的名字。他们身上都连接了一大堆的传感器， NASA 可以远距离了解未来真正太空人在搭乘猎户座时会面对的飞行状况。这次阿提米斯在发射的途中不像以前这个阿波罗发射就发射一步一步的向这个月球靠近。它在发射路途中 SLS 火箭的第2节脱离以后，将会顺道发射10颗的立方卫星。这10颗所谓的微小卫星任务有很多，从这个升空辐射对生物体影响的探测，一直到月球的探测都有，可以说是开展未来阿提米斯任务的尖兵如果您刚才有加入我们，就可以听到我们前面有提到，就是说在发射的最后阶段发射是交给这个自动发射系统来控制，也就是说发射一旦进入30秒就不可能回头，只能继续发射。这是这个系统的这个主导的一些这个程序和过程。 如果按照这个 NASA 的规划啊，今天的发射如果一切顺利进行，至少会这个持续大概将近2个小时，因为必须要等到1个小时57分以后，才能确定这个猎户座是不是成功从 SLS 火箭的第2节分离开始单独的月球旅行。所以一旦这个顺利发射，这个时间会拖到这个2个小时左右。至于这个猎户座多久会接近这个月球预定在发射后的第6天，猎户座将会这个接近月球，距离月球的表面只有60英里，这是这一次任务当中最近的一次距离。目前倒计时的时钟是这个暂时被 hold 住我们画面好像有一点问题，我们来切换这个不同的场景跟画面。
To the moon. Now, Artemis 1 is the first integrated flight test of NASA's deep space exploration systems. That's the ground system here at Kennedy Space Center, the Space Launch System, or SLS rocket, and the Orion Spacecraft. We will send an uncrewed Orion spacecraft farther beyond the moon than any of the Apollo missions before it. For Artemis 2, Orion will have astronauts on board as it orbits the moon. Then future Artemis missions will land the first woman and first person of color on the surface of the moon. So, Kayla, why do we want to go back to the moon?
现在是这个一个远眺的画面。还有的等，我们来看一下这个 NASA TV 目前的一些这个现场的一些转播的画面。
Even imagine that could be real. I think we're all just honored to be a part of the team that's doing this. We're just a small representation of all of the amazing human beings around the world that it takes to do something as audacious as returning to the moon, learning what we need to go onto Mars. So we're just all excited to support the program in any way we can. But of course, a ride to the moon would be incredible. So I think we're all just dreaming about those moonwalks.
Now, since Artemis 1 is setting the stage for those future crewed missions, is there anything in particular about this 26-day mission that you will be watching? Is it re-entry?
Yeah, you know, we've mentioned that a few times throughout the broadcast tonight. The re-entry is a really important part of the flight, of course, and the heat shield, we're interested in seeing how it performs in real life.
这就是我们刚才前面说的观察重点，就是从地月转移轨道，就从这个月球回来，重新进入地球轨道，这是一个非常值得观察的重点。也就是说，在这个地方其实有一定的危险性跟不可控制性它进来的速度非常快，有高达在32马赫，所以是否能够平安顺利的进来，最后是降落在这个太平洋圣地亚哥的外海，这是一个值得观察的一个重点。我们继续来听现场的一些画面。
female launch director. Take a look at how she and other women across NASA are shattering glass ceilings.
When I was a little girl, I wanted to be an astronaut,
a scientist,
a doctor.
我们现在回到现场来看一下最新的画面。
To be strong and independent. When we were asked to draw a picture of what we wanted to be when we grew up, I drew an astronaut standing on the surface of the moon.
All I thought about was when I was going to get to NASA.
It's a huge honor to be NASA's first female launch director, to be the launch director.
T-minus 10 minutes and holding. Got an update from the range to the NASA test director that their work on the bad Ethernet switch is complete. They are ready for open loop tests. This tests the range ability to send a destruct signal to the rocket in the case it were to go off course and endanger the public. This is a mandatory test that needs to be completed. Again, the range finishing the work on the replacement of their Ethernet switch that was rendered their radar acquisition and sending of the flight termination signal to the SLS rocket repaired. And so now they need to run an open loop test to confirm that they have good signal going into the rocket in case they need to send a flight termination signal. For the upper stage of the rocket, we are, well, let's talk about the whole rocket. Core stage and upper stage. We have the core stage in stable replenish, both hydrogen and oxygen. And in the upper stage, we're stable on the liquid oxygen side. We briefly paused fast fill on the upper stage, which is currently at 80% filled, in order to do a test of the vent valve on that liquid hydrogen tank. Fast fill has resumed, and currently we are in topping on the upper stage of liquid hydrogen. So that is just in. We are into topping on the upper stage of the liquid hydrogen tank, and we are awaiting the range testing their flight termination system with the launch team. This is Artemis Launch Control. We are currently in a T-10 hold. This is a pre-planned hold that has 11 minutes left. The pre-planned hold goes for a half hour. The T0 is set for 1:04 a.m. Eastern Time, but currently the launch team is working to catch up to what appears to be a slip into the launch window, which is currently 2 hours and goes until 3:04 a.m. Eastern Time. Now we'll get a solid T0 once the launch team is able to determine how much work is left. But again, it's based on the math and where we are, it looks like we are slipping into the window. But again, that's not official. We don't have a new T0 as of right now. This is Artemis Launch Control.
好的，您刚刚听到的是这个控制中心更新的一些最新讯息啊。目前因为刚才在这个填充燃料的过程遇到许多的问题，大大小小的问题，另外还有发射终止系统的一些设备更换的问题都让这个时间造成拖延。所以很显然，在这个美东时间1点04分，也就是中港台时间下午2点04分原定的发射时间是不可能准时发射。现在还在等待要设定最新的发射时间。目前估算起来，剩下的这个时间应该还是可以落在2个小时的时间窗口之内不过这一切还要等这个指挥中心最后的裁决。这是目前这个在现场的一些最新状况。 如果您现在才加入我们，也欢迎您利用我们这个聊天室功能的这个意见调查来表达您的意见您认为今天也就是这个美东时间16号是有可能顺利发射吗？还是器械问题又受到单延，或者是天气状况？目前天气状况还算好，根据这个太空军的气象联队的预估今天有90%的机会是适合发射，所以天气状况目前看起来还好。另外还有您认为这一次会发射失败吗？欢迎您透过我们的意见调查来表达意见。比较有趣的一点是说，刚开始的时候我们可以看到顺利发射的人比较多那现在似乎这个因为器械出问题被迫顺延的人数开始增加。一方面在守候这个 SLS 大火箭今天能不能顺利发射，也欢迎您订阅这个哈利说这个频道，在往后有机会一些重要的发射，一些重要的链接，甚至是这个猎户座太空舱返回这个海面的降落如果有机会的话，我们会为您进行直播这是一个小众而且是比较少人比较这个兴趣导向的一个频道。如果您是今天收看我们的这个直播也欢迎您订阅以后可以收到有关于任何发射的一些最新讯息。我们来看一下这个 NASA TV 它目前的一个现场直播的一个画面，我们把画面切换过去。
Of creating a blueprint for how we're going to explore with humans and do science throughout the solar system. So we're going to learn through the Artemis campaign on the moon, and then we're going to go demonstrate it on Mars, and then the next destination, who knows where.
Right. I mean, we're going so much further than we ever have before. Pam Melroy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Go Artemis.
Of course, go Artemis. Megan, back to you.
Thank you both for that interview. Now, teams over at NASA's Johnson Space Center are also monitoring today's launch attempt. So why don't we go back over there with Leah to tell us what's going on over there.
Thanks, Megan. And you're right, teams here in Mission Control Houston continue to monitor today's events. Again, they will really kick into action once we have liftoff, and they'll remain on console all the way through splashdown. But quickly, I have to show you something, a little show and tell. It makes me feel like the coolest kid in school. I've got a moon rock here. I hope you can get a good shot of it. It is from Apollo 15, 1971. And when it was brought back to Earth, it was part of a larger rock. In total, it was 21 pounds. This is, of course, a smaller section of that. But we're looking forward to the Artemis program and being able to go back to the moon so that we can continue to gather these kinds of samples, but this time at the lunar South Pole. We've never been there, and we've never brought samples back from that area. So we're really excited to see what might differ in those samples and the ones that we have here. Now, of course, we've got a whole laboratory of scientists that are able to study all of those samples. We just opened some up for the first time earlier this year so that we're able to test with new technology everything that we can learn about these samples that we brought back now 50 years ago. So hopefully within the next few years we're bringing some new ones back to use that same experimental process on and tell us a little bit more about the moon. But just had to show this off. Apollo 15 moon rock. We're looking forward to having some Artemis ones here at Johnson Space Center. With that, I will send it back to you at KSC.
You were a cool kid before you even had the moon rock, so.
刚才其实他顺便打了一个广告就是未来这个 SLS 在 阿提米斯3的时候，计划载人在月球的着陆点会是在月球南极附近。我们知道中国在探月上也取得这个非常大的进步也是朝这个南极以及这个月球背面的一些区域去进行探勘我们有一个视频特别介绍为什么大家都选南极如果有兴趣的，欢迎到我们的YouTube 频道，可以再次看一下这个视频。
We got to Green Run, which is a full duration hot fire. It's a very historic time for us at Stennis. It was so exciting to be a part of. It was 7 years of hard work by a lot of really great people.
And Jack,
just so excited to be here to see it.
And Jack, you were actually telling me that you know firsthand, how much work has gone into tonight's launch. What does it feel like to be here tonight, seeing the rocket fully integrated on the pad, ready to go?
Man, I'm just incredibly grateful to be a part of this history and just really excited to see this thing launch.
And Barry, you were telling me that you know also firsthand, the adversity that these teams have overcome to be here tonight. Do you have a word of encouragement, anything that you'd like to say to the teams?
这是现场浏览民众的一些这个采访的画面事实上，在第一次准备要进行这个发射的时候，当时佛罗里达的这个旅游当局是估计现场观看人员可能高达10万人，可是当时是在这个白天发射比较有利这个观测，也必须也比较容易看得到。那现在是在晚上虽然这个发射有火光有亮光在远处可见，可是这个毕竟这个能见度不是那么好，所以在现场观看的民众实际上比前几次预定发射可以说已经少了很多，再加上现在的天气稍微是比较冷一点，虽然在佛罗里达当然还是这个非常舒服的天气不过这个是让这个现场观看的人员减少，不过有许多人是聚集在一起，透过这个转播来看这一次 SLS 的发射。
Maybe it's new.
I know, but yeah, just look at that crowd. It's really fun to see again all these people who are captivated, young and old, by today's launch attempt and the beginning of the Artemis program. I know that they're probably looking at the clock and wondering when we might see the launch today. So lovely to see all those people.
And there's the Space and Rocket Center, where we have a ton of people waving their flags, cheering us on tonight for this incredible launch this evening.
I love that. They totally look like cheerleaders, and they're embracing it. I love it. And yeah, this is the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. This is the Visitor Center over in Huntsville, Alabama. As I've said before, Marshall Space Flight Center there is super instrumental in
我们刚刚说到这个现场，这个在佛罗里达的这个甘乃迪太空中心，肯尼迪太空中心观看发射并不容易。不过透过转播，我们可以看到各相关的机构一些人员、一些科研跟专家都在这个透过转播来观看这一次 SLS 的发射。
Reasonable time over there in Germany. It is 7 a.m. So I'm going to say Guten Morgen to them. Did I say it right? Guten Morgen to them over there in Bremen, Germany. Again, the Airbus company. All right, so let's get another check on the launch team with our Daryl Nail, who's inside there and has an update for us.
Yeah, that's right, Megan. So we are clearly in a delay now. The NASA test director, who's basically flying the ship for the launch countdown tonight, has said that we are extending the hold that we were currently in at T-minus 10 minutes and counting. And so that puts us off the 1:04 a.m. Eastern Time launch. We're now slipping indefinitely into the hold. NASA test director Carlos Monge saying that we are currently estimating how much work needs to be done before resuming the polling that is supposed to take place 15 minutes before launch. It then goes to terminal count at T-minus 10 minutes. Now we've got an update on the tanking of the upper stage liquid hydrogen tank. Currently 95% filled. We're in topping on that tank. It is the last of 4 tanks in the Space Launch System that needed to be completely fueled up before we launch. Of course, cryogenic tanking, a complex operation that has seen some delays tonight. We had a roughly hour delay after a replenish valve on the core stage liquid hydrogen side required hands-on work by a Red Crew team that went out to the launch pad and tightened down some bolts on the valve and got it fixed before leaving the launch pad, and then launch team verifying that that work was complete. Now currently we're awaiting some work with the range. The 45th Space Wing, which oversees the range here, makes sure that the airspace and the ocean out over the flight path is clear, and also has the responsibility to destruct the rocket should it go off track. They have been working on some issues with their equipment and sending a flight termination signal to the rocket. There is testing that must happen with the flight termination system that was delayed by a bad Ethernet switch. Switch has been changed out, and now the range is looking to start testing their connectivity to the rocket in order to preserve.
您听到的是现场指挥中心的最新的 update 好消息是目前发射还在这个安排当中，也就是并没有放弃在今天继续发射。但比较不好的消息是，看起来发射会延后半个小时到1个小时以上。目前燃料装填还在继续进行，那指挥中心还在估算受到刚才拖延以后，什么时候可以重启倒计时可以设定最新的发射时间。目前这个发射还没有取消，我们继续关注现场的画面。
Watching Apollo footage of astronauts doing geology on the surface of the moon is a really great way to think about preparing for Artemis, for putting people on the lunar surface once again.
我们也利用现在还有一点时间，我们来了解这个正常的一些发射程序通常这个 NASA 在火箭发射前倒计时15分钟会是一个重要的关键，因为这时候现场指挥官会像是点名一样，一个叫名就是各个任务组一要回报是否准备好进行发射，也就是要每一个任务组都回报这个ready to go 都没有问题，然后整个倒计时才会继续进行，一直进行到发射倒计时前的10分钟。除了15分钟是一个检验点，另外6分钟跟倒数这个1分30秒是另外2个重要的检验点如果在这个检验点遇到时间它还可以暂停，然后再把时间延长倒回去10分钟，那重新展开倒计时。不过一旦过了最后的30秒的时间整个发射机制是交到电脑自动来接手控制，这时候就不能回头，只能继续进行发射。这是一般正常的一些发射的程序刚才我们前面提到就是说今天一旦顺利发射整个时间会维持大概2个小时，因为最后猎户座太空船将在发射后的1小时57分钟以后 才会与 SLS 火箭的第二节分离，展开单独的月球之旅。这个是一个非常重要的关键，只有走到这个时候我们才可以确定这一次发射可以说是顺利进行一直要等到这个6天以后，也就是要等到11月21号以后，猎户座才会接近月球可以说是飞行的这个距离相当长。到了发射第6天，也就是11月21号那一天当时猎户座最近距离月球的表面只有60英里，这也是这一次任务最接近月球的一次然后猎户座会再度远离月球，就一个椭圆形的大轨道式进行绕月飞行。总结前面的一些一些特别的是一些讨论这一次这个阿提米斯1号任务的观察重点其实可以分为这个3个方面。一个方面就是这个猎户座太空船在结束环绕月球任务后，能不能借着这个星球引力作用跟服务舱本身的推力从月球轨道成功转回地球轨道，这是一个非常重要的关键，也是标志这一次任务可否成功第二个观察重点是就是从今天发射开始，一直到25天半之后这个返回舱降落到海面，这整个飞行环节每一个环节的连接是否顺畅，这是第二个观察重点。第三个观察重点是最后的返回舱能不能精准在预定的海面降落，是不是在那个区域降落，可以安全收回猎户座的返回舱，这是第三个观察重点。猎户座返回舱预计在12月11号以后是降落在加州圣地亚哥外海的太平洋海面。目前我们还在等待指挥中心更新预定的发射时间现在正好是原先预定的发射时间，但是很显然今天的发射如果继续进行，会延后半个小时甚至1个小时希望还是落在今天2个小时的发射窗口之内，否则就要改天进行，又让许多人相当失望。 我们一方面在等待指挥中心更新新的发射时间准备这个倒计时的开始。那一方面也可以利用这个时间告诉我们你的意见。您认为今天有机会顺利发射吗？还是因为气旋原因又被迫延后，或者是因为天气状况，或者是发射失败？我们有一个意见调查表欢迎您加入我们的投票。虽然说这个 SLS 火箭可以说是拖了相当长的时间，好几年，光是今年又改了好多次不过这个各项登月准备工作以及这个搭配的计划，目前都是顺利启动。我们看到为未来登月载具导航的 Capstone 月轨自动定位和导航实用卫星是于这个6月28号借由这个 Rocket Lab 的火箭发射。这枚卫星是花了将近4个月的时间，在这个月是进入受地球和月球引力双双牵引，所谓的近直线绕月晕轮轨道 NRHO。我们曾经说过，这个 Capstone 是非常重要，因为它关乎未来各项环月球任务的指路明灯跟通讯保障，可以说是这个通讯的重要衔接一旦它的就位，对于未来的登月或是进一步登上火星，这太遥远了。这个是否成功，这个是有重要的意义。另外一个是由 SpaceX 猎鹰火箭发射，这个韩国第一枚月球探测器所搭载的 NASA 月球陨石坑水冰摄影机也已经这个出发。我们来听指挥中心现在最新的一些这个资讯。
And that's the possible liberation, as they say, of some RTV, room temperature vulcanization, essentially caulk that is around the Orion between Orion and panels that come off to reveal the solar panels for the Orion and European service module. The problem is essentially this: the caulk has a sensor in it, and it through camera inspections of the rocket, they have been able to determine that it is loose and could potentially come off. This is the same issue that was brought before a mission management team, which evaluates additional risks to the rocket, just a day ago. This happened after Hurricane Nicole passed through and delaminated some of the caulk around the bottom of Orion that connects to those panels. The team has determined that this caulk that encompasses this sensor on Orion is likely to come off after launch. And so the engineering team went and did a full analysis on what that debris trajectory could be once it comes off. And they evaluated that it falls within the same amount of risk that was evaluated by the mission management team a day ago. And so with no additional risk, that constraint has been removed. The engineers going on further to say that the RTV, as was discussed a day ago, is a loose and pliable material that is unlikely to cause a higher risk due to damage. They say it's likely to hit the LVSA, which is the adapter, the cone-shaped adapter that meets Orion and comes down, and the ICPS, and then comes down to the core stage. It is a rigid structure that would be able to withstand the impact of that RTV. So that constraint was just removed after discussion between engineers and the NASA test director, launch director, and mission management chair Mike Serafin. And so now we continue on. We are slipping into the launch window. Currently 9 minutes into the launch window, which ends at 3:04 a.m. Eastern Time. The team is currently evaluating the work they have left to do and how much time it will take them to complete it before they can start polling for go. That would normally happen 15 minutes before launch, and we are not ready to resume that polling at this moment. And so we are going into the window. The question is, how deep are we going into the window? A rough calculation of the work, and this is a rough calculation just for the benefit of those who are watching and those who are here to watch the launch, is no earlier than 1:45 a.m. That again is a rough estimation. This work has to be evaluated, calculated, and a new T0 given, and currently at this moment we don't have that. Just want to be real clear about that.
您刚刚听到的是这个指挥中心陈述在准备发射过程所遇到的一些状况跟问题啊，特别是在飓风过后，在猎户座附近的一个感应器啊，是出现问题，这过去也出现过。那关于何时发射，刚才指挥中心还在讨论当中，不过播报人员是抓了一个大概时间，说最快也要在30分钟以后才有可能进行发射，也就是说现在距离这个正式发射时间还有超过30分钟以上的时间。但是我们知道这个距离这个发射窗口结束可以说是越来越近， 所以可以说是有很大的，今天能不能顺利发射，可以说有很大的挑战。
We put people on board, and that's why we're heading out to DRO. Eventually, though,
我们来看一下各地在观看这个发射直播的一些画面。
That's the home to the SLS program office, so they have a dog in the fight tonight,
They
seeing
do.
Artemis launch for the first time.
Is that an inflatable astronaut in the center? Do you see that? I think somebody is dressed up as an astronaut.
Look at that.
Yeah,
They're ready to
representing.
go.
I love this. Yeah, I'm so glad that they're there. Again, these visitor centers are closed to the public, but you know, the people there decided to hold a watch party, and
look,
that's
our
exciting
friends
to
in
see.
Germany are ready for us this time.
I know, clapping.
这是在德国的一个空中客车，也就是 Airbus 空中巴士制造公司的一个欣赏直播的一个画面。
module for the Orion spacecraft. So really, we should be applauding them. They shouldn't be applauding. Thank you so much, guys, for your contribution to the program, and can't wait to see Orion and SLS launch. Okay, so now let's head back over to Daryl Nail over with the launch team so we can hear any updates about a new T0.
Yeah, Megan, thank you. And a clearer picture is starting to emerge as the launch team now reports out that they only have a few minutes left of work to do before they're ready to pick up polling. And we're also hearing that some of that polling, which kicks off with the mission management team, is also now just about 3.5 minutes away. Now, we are currently still in that hold, but the launch team, NASA's test director, is continuing to move the team forward. We've wrapped up work on the upper stage and the lower stage. You're looking now live inside firing room 1, where launch director Charlie Blackwell Thompson is overseeing her launch team. We've had a number of delays that have put us off the T0, but we are starting to track to a T0 close to around a quarter till, top of the hour. But we do need to have some polling that takes place. I'm pausing now because I'm listening in to the teams as they communicate. In this launch window, which we're currently 26 minutes into, and it's 2 hours long, it runs until 3:04 a.m. Eastern Time. We have what's called 40 cutouts. And in those cutouts, they range from about a second to about a minute. These are times where they can't launch. These cutouts must be accounted for when determining a new T0. The upper stage of the rocket, which was the last to get ready and configured, just recently, the team cycled the liquid hydrogen valves, which is required. And they are currently working on the LO2 valves, liquid oxygen valves in the upper stage. That work is almost done. We are now a minute and a half away from the poll of the mission management team, which is several minutes before T-minus 15 minutes. When that poll starts, we'll get a clearer picture of our T0. NASA's test director has informed the launch team to all switch to a common communication channel. It's called 232. And what this means is that the entire launch team is now on one channel, and all future communication will happen there. Whereas there are many channels. Now they reduce it down to one. Just heard from NASA Test Director Carlos Monge. I'm sorry, Jeff Spaulding. Jeff Spaulding's on. They swapped out. There are currently no constraints to launch. Great news. Again, no constraints to launch. And they're getting ready to pick up with a poll to determine readiness for launch. Okay, NASA Test Director Jeff Spaulding getting ready to conduct the readiness poll, so we are getting close. We're going to pull up the audio now so that you can listen in.
Please go. And rock. Rockets go. All right, copy all. And Launch Director NTD, our launch team is ready to proceed at this time.
I copy all NTD. At this time, I will proceed with my poll.
这就是我们刚才前面有提到的，就是指挥官会依询问各组准备状况。
EGS Program Chief Engineer.
EGS Program Chief Engineer verifies that the EGS, SLS, and Orion Program Chief Engineers have no constraints and are go for launch.
Copy, Greg. Thank you. EGS Chief Safety Officer.
The EGS CSO verifies the SLS, Orion, and EGS CSOs have no constraints and are go for launch.
Copy, John. Thank you. Range weather.
Weather has no constraints and weather is go for launch.
Copy, LWO and Mission Manager. And Mission Manager, Launch Director.
Launch Director, Mission Manager on 232. The mission management team has been polled. You have a go to proceed with terminal count and launch of Artemis 1.
I copy all. Thank you. And NTD, Launch Director.
Go ahead, Launch Director.
Yes, sir. On behalf of all the men and women across our great nation who have worked to bring this hardware together to make this day possible, and for the Artemis generation, this is for you. At this time, I give you a go to resume count and launch Artemis 1.
Copy, Launch Director, and thank you. All right, we do have a couple of steps to configure, and then we will be ready to resume the clock. CVSE, NTD.
CVSE here.
Initiate recording of Orion cameras at this time.
In work.
R, NTD.
RSR here.
Perform the booster ignition SNA arm rotation enable.
NDT, RSR, booster ignition SNA arm and rotation enable is complete.
And I copy. Thank you.
Okay, so there you heard the poll from Launch Director.
Early.
Getting ready to get that new T0 time. The poll that you heard was the NASA Test Director's poll. And
all right, and we have verified no cutouts at this time. And all personnel, we are going to resume the clock. GLS, you can resume the clock on your mark.
GLS copies. Countdown clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. GLS mainline has been initiated.
Okay.
T-minus 10 minutes and counting.
We are T-minus 10 minutes away from liftoff of Artemis 1. As you can see, the clock is now moving. Let's put that up. T-minus 9 minutes and 47 seconds. The L-minus 15 poll complete. They went
哇，好紧张！刚刚各任务组表达这个自己的看法，都让这个发射是继续进行啊。目前这个距离发射时间只有9分30秒左右。
1:47 a.m. Eastern Time and 44 seconds. We went straight into terminal count. Liftoff now 9 minutes away. So terminal count. Control has been given over to the GLS, the ground launch sequencer, a computer and software that is doing all of the commanding and monitoring of the Space Launch System. We'll hear call-outs from the GLS operator, Alex Pandalos. As well as NASA Test Director Jeff Spalding. GLS is pre-tensioning the umbilicals at this very moment. You can see them as they run down the rocket. That's getting them ready to detach. At liftoff, those arms will swing away. We'll let go of the rocket in a clockwise direction. T-minus 8 minutes and counting. The GLS is performing up to 100 commands per second, including configuring ground systems for power transfer to the rocket. GLS is turning on cameras, recording video inside and outside the crew module to collect data for engineers. Purging the aft skirt booster with high flow nitrogen. Clear out any hydrogen gas that may be there. You can see the crew access arm is already retracted. When there is crew during Artemis 2, it would happen at T-minus 6 minutes. But out of abundance of caution, they went ahead and retracted the arm well ahead of liftoff. Want to point your attention to the base of the mobile launcher. Something wasn't done to reduce the power from the pressure caused by the rocket's ignition and thunderous sound. It could damage the rocket. So the ignition overpressure and sound suppression system will flood the mobile launcher with water. You'll see that sequence start at T-minus 17 seconds. Now coming up in less than 30 seconds, the ground launch sequencer will start bringing the high energy systems online, starting with core stage pressurization. Fire Room 1 is completely silent as they listen for the next call.
GLS is go for core stage tank pressurization.
The core stage tank is now pressurizing to flight levels. The replenish valve to the liquid hydrogen tank now closing. The liquid oxygen tank will come a little later. Now we're arming the Orion ascent pyros and transfer to internal power. The launch abort system, or LAS jettison motor, is now armed. On this flight, the abort motor is inactive because there is no crew on board. Up next is the flight termination system. or FTS, which gives the Space Force the ability to destruct the rocket if it goes in the wrong direction. Let's listen in for that.
GLS is go for FTS arm.
The flight termination system is now armed. Coming up at 4 minutes and 40 seconds, a big moment. This is where the RS-25 engines and their bleed go to high flow. It's been a little tricky to dial in.
GLS is go for LH2 high flow bleed check.
Good word, we've passed that. The cryo team got the LH2 engine bleed pressure loop dialed in. They are now at the right temperature for launch. Countdown continues. T-minus 4 minutes, 15 seconds. Up next, GLS fires up the KPUs. Those are high-speed turbines which provide pressure to hydraulic pumps that steer the RS-25s. Stands for Core Stage Auxiliary Power Unit Start.
GLS is go for core stage APU start.
That now leads to the thrust vector control test at T-minus 2 minutes.
目前这个倒计时是继续进行，距离发射只有3分45秒左右。
At T-minus 3 minutes and 10 seconds, you will hear the go for purge sequence 4. That's a helium purge.
等一下1分半是另外一个检查点，另外是进入30秒以后，整个发射会交给这个自动控制系统，这样不能中途喊停。
GLS is go for purge sequence 4.
And in just a few seconds, GLS will close the core stage LOX vent, liquid oxygen. The white vapor cloud caused from the super cold gaseous oxygen condensing the water in the atmosphere will disappear. You see it coming out there now. And there it goes, it's closed. LOX vent closed, pressure rising in the core stage LOX tank to flight levels.
看来今天有可能进行发射。
Control actuator test. Engines will gimbal.
现在距离发射2分30秒。
The 4 core stage RS-25 engines gimbaling around, testing the ability to steer the rocket into space. They will operate at 109% performance. Each RS-25 throwing down 500,000 pounds of thrust. All 4, 2 million pounds. All together with the boosters, 8.8 million pounds of thrust.
GLS go for upper stage to internal power.
2分钟。
The upper stage has gone to internal power. So power is removed from the rocket's upper stage, the ICPS, and it's been switched to battery power. The same milestone is coming up for the core stage at T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds.
GLS go for core stage to internal power.
The rocket's core stage, which houses the 3 flight computers, is now on battery power. So there is no more hold time available because there's no more margin on the batteries. So if we have a hold, we'd have to recycle back to T-minus 10 minutes and recharge those batteries. The count continues. A note now, shortly after liftoff.
1分钟。
Shortly after liftoff, Mission Control Houston will take control of the rocket, and my colleague, Leah Cheshire, will take over commentary. T-minus 50 seconds and counting. Coming up at T-minus 33 seconds, the GLS will hand off control to the ALS. This is the autonomous launch sequencer.
就是关键的30秒，进入30秒就不能喊停。
Control of the rocket, but the ALS will check, make sure there's no holds coming from the ground up until T-minus 2 seconds.
GLS is go for ALS.
And we are go for ALS. The space launch system is now
OK， 现在是交由自动系统控制。
Maiden voyage to the moon. Launch team can no longer recycle the count. Sound suppressor water now flowing under the ML. And here we go.
点火。
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiated. 7, 6, 5. Core stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition.
哇，发
And
射。
liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
希望一切顺利。这是1972年最后一次阿波罗任务之后的首次探索月球任务启动，速度非常的快。接下来几分钟是一个关键。
First milestone will be for the vehicle to pass through max Q at about 1 minute and 9 seconds into launch. This is the greatest period of atmospheric force on the rocket. SLS now traveling 607 miles per hour. You're looking at 8.8 million pounds of maximum thrust. Quiet here. In mission control. The 4 core stage engines are throttling down ahead of passing through max Q.
真的让人有一点紧张哦。
Now 1 minute 21
SLS
seconds
火
into the
箭
flight,
现在已
traveling
经发射升空。
20 miles per hour. The 4 core stage engines are back at
稍待
maximum
一个关
thrust.
键点，就是发射后2分12秒，2个捆
The next
绑
major
式的固体
milestone
火
will
箭
be
助
for
推
the
器将会
solid
分
rocket
离
boosters to
并
cut
落
off and
向大
jettison
西
about
洋。
2 minutes and 11 seconds into the flight, so about 30 seconds from now.
还有30
Again,
秒，
quiet here
2
in
个
Mission
捆
Control
绑式的
Houston
助
as
推
teams
器要分
continue
离。
monitoring the flight of Artemis 1. We're now 16 miles downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, traveling over 2,800 miles per hour. Standing by for solid rocket booster jettison
2
and
分
shortly
12秒
thereafter.
是助推器脱离3分11秒服务舱的保护整流罩将会弹射开。这是2个接下来的观察重点。
Confirmation that the solid rocket boosters have separated these 177-foot boosters.
好的，现在2个捆绑式
Now
固
the
体
core
火
stage
箭推进
continues
器
to
已
power
经
the
成
flight
功
of
分离
Orion,
并
all
落向
4
大西洋。
RS-25 engines firing, traveling over 3,400 miles per hour, 46 miles downrange. 2 minutes and 36 seconds into the flight. Hearing nominal calls here in Mission Control Houston. We've still got 4 good engines on the core stage. Next up, we'll be looking for the service module fairing to separate. This is 3 15 by 15-foot fairing panels, providing structural support, protecting the service module. Those will separate at about 3 minutes and 11 seconds into flight, and very shortly thereafter will be followed by the launch
3
abort
分
system
11秒，欧洲
separation.
制造的服务舱保护整流罩将会弹射开。紧接着，
Just
在
over
3分
3
16
minutes
秒，
into the
猎户
flight of
座将会
Artemis 1,
抛
now
弃
traveling
紧
over
急发射终止
4,060
系
miles
统
per hour,
也就
83
是若
miles
是搭
downrange.
载太空人，也就是宇航员
We just
用
had
来协助
confirmation that
逃
the
生的
service
系
module
统。
fairing has separated. And that the launch abort system pyros have fired, separating those from Orion as well. For future crew members.
我们刚刚前面说过，接下来可能会为期2个钟头，因为到1分57秒才知道猎户座有没有成功与第2节分离。
We just heard the call for 3-engine press, meaning if SLS were to lose an engine at this point in the mission, we could still achieve a nominal mission. We would just have an extended main engine cutoff time. However, we still have 4 good engines, all at maximum thrust right now, powering the first flight of Artemis at 5,200 miles per hour, 148 miles downrange. We're 4 minutes and 16 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1. So far, we've had a clean ascent. We saw those solid rocket boosters jettison about 2 minutes and 11 seconds after liftoff.
现在你看
Shortly
转播
after,
其
we
实
had the
是示
service
意
module
图，并不是真实的
panels
图像
fairing
哦。
separate,
下面是这
as well
个
as the
重
launch
要
abort
的
system. The
关
launch
键
abort
节
system
点。
was inert for this flight, except to perform this separation. Those 4 core stage engines will continue to fire and power the flight of Artemis 1, now traveling over 6,800 miles per hour, 229 miles downrange. Booster flight controller reports that the engines are looking good.
在下一个关键节点是在8分03秒左右，是要把这个主引擎关闭，然后8分15秒左右，第一节核心段将会与第二节中继段要进行分离。
Again, 4 good core stage engines, those 4 RS-25 engines. The last time those core stage engines flew, they were taking space shuttles to orbit, and now with upgraded capabilities, they're launching the future of human spaceflight.
您刚没听错，就是核心段所用的引擎是原来旧的这个太空穿梭机的太空梭所使用的。
We are now traveling 8,800 miles per hour, 345 miles downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center. Again, we are anticipating core stage main engine cutoff at about 8 minutes and 3 seconds. And about 10 seconds later, we'll see core stage separation, at which point Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will be flying free.
这就是所谓的8分03秒要关闭主引擎
Now traveling over
，8分
10,000
15秒
miles per
第一节
hour,
跟第二
6
节
minutes
分
and
离。
15 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1, 427 miles downrange. Quiet here on the loops in Mission Control Houston. Teams continue to monitor this first flight. About a minute and a half now until that core stage main engine cutoff time. Our 4 core stage engines continue to fire at maximum thrust. Coming up on 7 minutes since launch today, now traveling over 12,800 miles per hour, 563 miles downrange. Again, still quiet here in Mission Control Houston. As we prepare for main engine cutoff, the 4 RS-25 engines are beginning to throttle down. "30 seconds now until core stage main engine cutoff. All 4 engines continue to throttle down."
好的，要主引擎的4具引擎要进行这个。
Now 7 minutes 45 seconds into the flight, traveling over 16,000 miles per hour. Continuing to hear good calls here in Mission Control Houston. We're standing by for core stage main engine cutoff. And we have confirmation of core stage main engine cutoff. Orion is now in Earth's orbit. The flight dynamics officer reports that we have a nominal main engine cutoff. And we just heard the call for core stage separation. That means Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage are now flying free from the core stage of the Space Launch System. The next milestone will be solar array deployed approximately 18 minutes after liftoff. But before Orion stretches its wings, let's check back in with our friends at Kennedy Space Center and hear all about what it was like to hear the rocket roar off the launch pad. Megan and Kayla, I've got to hear all about it.
Well, if you're just joining us, welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center, where we just watched Artemis 1 launch, our first step towards our next adventure into deep space. As Leah said, I'm NASA's Megan Cruz, and this is NASA astronaut Kayla Barron. And I'm kind of still giddy and speechless. I don't even know how to explain how I'm feeling right now.
I feel the same way. This is the first launch that I've been able to watch in person. And I've got to say, it was incredible. It took my breath away, and I was tearing up. Just what an amazing accomplishment for this team, this international team, people who have been.
其实很多人感觉可能都跟他一样，因为前面拖了太多次了，所以这次真的发射还让人家有一点不敢相信啊。现在距离发射已经有9分38秒，目前这个第二节以及猎户座太空船是继续环绕地球进行飞行。 稍待在这个18分钟发射18分钟以后将会进行太阳能板的部署。
And it just shook everything around us. Did you feel that? Like in my bones, I felt that.
Oh yeah. The cool thing is just kind of the delay between what you see and what you hear, because of course the sound travels a little bit slower, and it was just amazing. The ground shook. We could hear the thrust pushing that rocket into space. 8.8 million pounds of thrust.
Yes.
It's incredible. It was amazing to see here live in person.
How does it compare? So this is your first launch on the ground. How does it compare to your launch when you're in the capsule soaring towards space?
I mean, equally emotional, I think.
Yeah.
We train for everything, and so when we're in that capsule waiting for launch, we're just running our procedures. You could almost, trick us and say that we were in the simulator and it wasn't real, but like in that moment of liftoff, when the thrust builds underneath you, like we saw it today, it's just hard not to be overwhelmed by the emotional experience, the excitement, the joy of that moment. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think we can't say it enough. This team really deserved this moment. They've been working so hard for this moment. When I heard that we got into terminal count, it was, I felt a sense of relief and excitement for them that I think everybody here did. We really wanted them to succeed. We really wanted to see the launch today. And wow, I will never forget this.
Me neither. It was an incredible experience to be here and see that happen.
Yeah. Was there anything that was particularly surprising to you? Again, this is your first launch. What were you expecting?
I think we also had a nighttime launch for our launch. And so I think one thing you underestimate is how much it lights up the night sky. We were able to watch it all the way through that trajectory. We were able to see the boosters separate and everything. So it was just an incredible view. It's amazing how much you get to see of the flight path when it's at night and it's lighting up the sky.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed this, but we see the moon here, and the trajectory of the rocket looked like it was flying towards me. You know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, that's so poetic. It's so beautiful. I'm so glad we launched today.
Yeah.
Wow.
Congratulations to the team. It's incredible.
We're going to head over to Daryl, who was at the launch team. Daryl, you got to count us down through that, through liftoff. I mean, how was that being in the launch control center with them?
Well, Megan, it was something else. I got to tell you, you're looking live inside the firing room where Charlie Blackwell-Thompson is about to address her team after a whole lot of hard work and preparation to get to this moment. Let's stand by and listen to her now.
Com check. But you can't hear it in the room. Can you guys hear me? No. The press site can hear me, but the room.
其实你看这个发射指挥中心，这其实还是这个以前这个阿波罗时代所继续沿用下来的。这个时间跟设备实际上都是用了非常长的时间啊。
I don't know what he's telling me to do.
你看这个工作人员表情，就是说一下这个发射上去，大家因为拖得太久，有一点难以置信的一个表情哦。好的，您现在看到的是 SLS 登月火箭首次发射的画面啊。现在一直到这个发射后的18分钟以后，这个猎户座要进行太阳能板的这个布置，这是下一个关键点。
Can you guys hear me? Oh, there we go. Is he ready for me?
指挥中心主任要发表讲话。
Well, for once, I might be speechless. So you guys know I have talked a lot about appreciating the moment that you're in. And we have worked hard as a team. You guys have worked hard as a team for this moment. This is your moment. It is not by chance that you are here today. So I want you to look around at this team and know that you have earned it. You have earned your place in the room. You have earned this moment. You have earned your place in history. You were part of a first. Doesn't come along very often. Once in a career, maybe. But we are all part of something incredibly special, the first launch of Artemis. The first step in returning our country to the moon and on to Mars. What you have done today will inspire generations to come. So thank you. Thank you for your resilience. You know, I said at the pre-test briefing, the harder the climb, the better the view. We showed the Space Coast tonight. What a beautiful view it is. So congratulations. So we got a couple of traditions here in launch control. And the first one is when you're in the position for the first time, you get a tie cutting. And so I have my launch director scissors. And I'm going to get my tie cut by a couple of legends that are here. And then anyone who wants their tie cut will be making the rounds in the firing room. You got your console chiefs. If they want to do it, that's fine. If you want me to do it, you might have to wait a little while, but I'll stay all night if I have to. It'll be my pleasure to cut ties. So I'm going to take care of mine, and then I have one other presentation that I want to make this evening.
This is Charlie Blackwell Thompson, Artemis 1 launch director. She just got her tie cut. That is a tradition here at NASA. We just got to hear her talk to the team, and one thing that really stuck out to me that she said is that they've really earned their place in history. We're coming up on solar array deploy. Let's go on to Leah.
非常不容易啊。 达成这个既定的目标。
Thanks, Megan. And yes, we're here in Mission Control Houston, still monitoring the Artemis 1 mission and the first flight of Orion atop the Space Launch System. So far, we saw successful liftoff at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time, all the way through separation from the core stage. We now have Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage flying free. And we've just heard that we have initiated solar array deploy. So we are turning our focus to that. The spacecraft was running on battery power, but stretching these wings will allow it to stop relying on those batteries and significantly extend the time it can stay in space. So solar array deploy takes about 12 minutes. We have 4 solar arrays that we need to deploy and latch. These will provide power to the spacecraft on its journey to distant retrograde orbit and all the way back to Earth. Once these are properly configured, again, Orion will no longer need to rely solely on battery power. And we expect this to be done about 30 minutes after liftoff. Right now, we're 19 minutes since liftoff today. Orion is now traveling 17,175 miles per hour. We're continuing to hear good calls here in Mission Control Houston from the flight controllers monitoring the mission. A little bit about these solar arrays as we wait. Again, we heard the call that the deploy has been initiated. We'll hear a little bit more about that once they start to unfold. These 4 solar arrays generate 11 kilowatts of power, which is enough electricity to power 2 3-bedroom houses, and they have a wingspan of 63 feet. Just one of these 6.5 by 6.5 foot panels has 1,250 solar cells. So you're looking at a total of 15,000 solar cells. Now, we just heard the call that all 4 solar arrays have been released. So we initially heard the initiation call. That command had been sent. Now those 4 solar arrays are released. Again, this is about a 12-minute process. The solar arrays will deploy straight, and you're getting a live view right now. This is really exciting. They'll eventually be swept back against the vehicle prior to translunar injection burn to prevent any loads from breaking or damaging the arrays. And on the end of each solar array is a camera that will capture imagery for us throughout the mission, along with a few other cameras placed outside and inside the spacecraft to help us monitor and perform various other inspections.
好的，现在这个整个监控是交给休斯
Of course,
顿
if you
控制
recall
中
the
心来进
Apollo
行，这
capsule
个是
design, there were no solar arrays. We had fuel
随
cells
机的摄
instead.
像
So
头所
this
传回
design
的
with
画面。
arrays gives us the opportunity to stay in orbit longer since we practically have no limit to the energy available for use from the sun. Coming up on 21 minutes since liftoff. Orion is attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. You can see those 4 solar arrays unfolding now. And again, Artemis 1 is a flight test. It's paving the way for a sustainable presence at the moon. Looking forward to the future, Gateway will be our space station in lunar orbit. And we have some similarities and differences in the solar arrays unfolding right now on Orion and those that'll be on Gateway. So like we're seeing now, these are deploying autonomously. The Gateway solar arrays will as well. And while these generate those 11 kilowatts of power, the 2 rollout solar arrays, or ROSAs, on Gateway will generate 60 kilowatts of power. That ROSA design is currently being tested aboard the space station. We have 2 new ones installed and a spacewalk conducted earlier today, preparing for another set. Coming up on 22 minutes since liftoff today, Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage traveling over 16,800 miles per hour.
刚才我们听到有许
The
多网
solar
友
arrays
说，为什么
deploying
没
now
有
are
办
part
法
of the
这个
European service
靠着
module.
随
It's
机
comprised
摄
of
像头来传回一
20,000
些画
parts
面
and。components.
现在慢慢
The
交
service
给这
module
个
was
休斯顿
developed
控
as
制
part of an
中心，
agreement
休斯
between
顿那
NASA
边
and the
是
European
传
Space
回来
Agency,
这
or
个
ESA.
随机摄像头的一些画面。
This is the first time NASA is using a European-built system as a critical element to power an American spacecraft.
这一次，这个猎户座的服务舱，也就是提供这个动力以及这个电池组的一个重要这个组件，是由这个欧洲应该是这个空中客车，也就是空中巴士公司。 现在发射已经有23分钟一直到30分钟。现在是这个延展这个猎户座太阳能板的一个过程。这个过程需要12分钟，它的太阳能板是慢慢的张开，去补充这个电池的电力。 我们知道这个阿提米斯1号任务，它的主要性质主要是一个测试的功能，测试这整套系统能否顺利进行，同时为未来的载人飞行是预做准备。
Coming up now, and 24 minutes into the flight of Artemis 1, spacecraft now traveling at 16,500 miles per hour around the Earth. We are in solar array deploy, and we have confirmation all 4 arrays are deployed.
OK， 现在它是在进行这个环绕地球这个飞行当中待会在发射后的52分钟第二节要进行22秒的发动机点火，它要慢慢提升这个轨道高度然后到1小时半左右的时候，第二节要执行关键的18分钟点火，就是要进入地月转移轨道，这是相当重要的一个环节。 我不知道今天晚上直播会进行多久啊？这个我们刚刚前面说过，要到这个将近2个小时，就是1小时57分以后，才能确定 SLS 火箭第2节。跟这个猎户座是成功分离，所以可能还要个1个小时半左右，我们才会知道结果。
Today's flight. Again, we are now 25 minutes and 47 seconds into the flight, and we have a complete deployment of all 4 solar arrays. Orion's journey to the moon continues as planned. Again, looking forward to that perigee raise maneuver. That'll be coming up again at about 53 minutes into the mission, so about 27 minutes from now. During the perigee raise maneuver, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will use its RL-10 engine to lift the lowest point of Orion in Earth's orbit. The current orbit is more of an oval shape than a perfect circle, and this burn will raise that point closest to Earth and make the orbit more circular. This will also include a checkout of Orion system and any adjustments to the solar arrays.
52、53分钟的时候，要进行关键的发动机点火来提升轨道高度。
For the next engine burn to send Orion to the moon, that's the translunar injection burn. That'll come up a little later, which is a longer burn, another firing of the RL-10 engine on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. We caught a glimpse there of those solar arrays, and with all 4 solar arrays properly deployed, Orion's journey to the moon continues, and we've got more operational updates coming up shortly, but for now, I'm going to toss it back to Megan and Kayla at Kennedy.
Leah, thank you so much. Our return to the moon will be different than the last time. We plan to explore more of the lunar surface and learn how to live and work there. With more on our destination, let's bring back NASA's Dan Hewitt with our new moon board.
Hey, thanks, Megan. I gotta be honest, we ran outside to catch it. I'm still shaking a little bit. That never gets old. That is always one of the coolest things you'll ever see in your entire life. And that rocket
有一个飞行过程，无论传送讯号跟转播，其实都有这个死角。现在利用这个中间空档时间，这个 NASA 人员是介绍过去阿波罗的登陆点，大家可以看到11、12没有13号，然后接着是14号、15号、16号、17号的着陆点。
Followed by 5 more successive landings, each time delivering 2 human beings to the surface of the moon. Our last one was Apollo 17, and that was in 1972, Gene Cernan and Harrison Smith stepping off for the last time. Now, we have not sent humans back since then, but they accomplished a lot under Apollo. Lots of technological advancements, deployed science instruments, brought back hundreds of pounds of lunar rocks and regolith, teaching us about the moon and also about our place in the solar system. The moon is fascinating because it doesn't have a lot of the geological processes we have here on Earth. You don't have erosion, you don't have wind and water wearing down rocks, you don't have plate tectonics that are constantly recycling the crust, and so everything out there is really old. In fact, one of the rocks brought back on Apollo 15, called the Genesis rock, was dated to be 4 billion years old, so from the primordial beginnings of our solar system. But as Kayla said a little bit earlier, those missions were measured in days, their spacewalks in just hours. With Artemis, we're looking to go and we're looking to stay. And we're not looking around the equator like under Apollo, we're looking at the lunar South Pole. Now, why? So
我们现在转到这个目前在行进中的一个画面。
We haven't stopped studying it. We've had orbiters like the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter.
这个是 NASA 内部新闻频道的一个所接收到的一个画面。目前这个距离发射已经有这个相当长的一段时间。 我们回到这个主转播台。
Use the moon as that jumping off point to Mars and beyond. So that's why the moon. We're going to see Orion fly around it for the very first time in just a couple of days. That launch was spectacular. I'm still way too excited, but can't wait to see some shots of the moon from up close from Orion. So I'll send it back over to you, Megan.
Thanks so much, Stan. So right now we're actually joined by members of the Red Crew. You'll remember from watching the launch coverage that the Red Crew was sent out by the launch team when the launch team identified a small leak.
这就是我们刚刚说的 Red Crew， 就是红色的紧急修复小组。他们在最后关头是到这个 SLS 火箭室进行这个每个环节的检修。我们来听他们的访问。
Behind me is Billy, and he's the experienced hydrogen tech out here.
And the three of you guys really, I would say, saved the day today. I mean, really, you guys had to go in there to what's called the blast danger zone. You guys are specially trained to be able to do operations on the pad while cryo is loading. Talk to us about getting that call, being told, hey, you guys need to go in there. And it was the first time for all three of you.
Yeah, all I could say is we were very excited. I was ready to get up there and go.
Really? How are you guys feeling?
Very, very comfortable, very confident in the test team and the procedures and our training. We did a great job.
Walk us. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So how gratifying it must be for you guys, because you train for this eventuality, but don't always get to do it. Billy was saying that he's been a Red Crew team member for 37 years, and this is the first time he's been called to go into the blast danger zone. So I know for us, when we're training for all of these eventualities, whether it's a spacewalk or robotics operations, you really want to put that training into practice. How do you guys feel like it went today?
Amazing. I still can't believe it. It's surreal to me. It's just insane.
Yeah, kind of walk us through what you were thinking. So you get there, and what is it, just like game time and you're really focused, or how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'd say we were very focused on what was happening up there, just making sure we knew what was happening, because the rocket's, it's alive, it's creaking, it's making venting noises, it's pretty scary. So on zero deck, my heart was pumping. Mm-hmm. My nerves were going, but yeah, we showed up today. I think as soon as we walked up those stairs, we were ready to rock and roll.
And they were telling us a bit about it while you were working on it. You guys were actually just torquing down the valve to prevent or reduce the leak rate or stop the leak. Is that right?
That's right. Just the packing gland is a little loose, so went up there and tightened her up.
You're probably still like in this oh my gosh moment, like all of us are. Has it actually hit you, like the role you played today in making Artemis 1 launch?
I still can't believe it. It's like I said, it's surreal and just amazing. I don't know about you guys, but
they're nodding along behind you for sure. Anything you want to say to the launch team? Again, this is a big day for the launch team, for you guys, NASA, but really the whole world. I mean, this is a historic launch that I think we'll all remember. We'll all remember, really.
如果你现在才加入我们这三位这个了不起的幕后英雄啊。他们是在最后关头发现 SLS 在灌注燃料过程当中还是有泄漏跟隐患的地方啊，他们可以说是深入这个火箭的底部啊，进行逐一的检视去修复，其实有相当大的危险性，把所有的这个连接的环节螺栓全部都再锁一遍，然后最后在数据检测之后发现这个状况好转。才导致今天可以顺利发射，所以他们可以说是今天这个顺利发射的一个幕后工程哦。
Thanks, Megan. And it has been a pretty smooth ride so far. And we are now, again, like you mentioned, coming up on 36 minutes since launch. That puts us about 17 minutes into the until the perigee raise maneuver. That's going to be the maneuver that lifts the lowest point of Orion's orbit around the Earth and puts us where we need to be ahead of the translunar injection burn. The translunar injection burn is that really long burn that we're going to need to send us on to the moon. So we've been treated to some exciting views from the spacecraft.
就是我们刚刚前面提到，在发射后53分，还剩下这个10多分钟以后，要进行22秒钟的这个发动机点火提升环地球轨道的高度，然后一直到1小时29分27秒，第二节将会执行非常长，长达18分钟的关键性点火。这时候将整个太空船呢是带入这个地月转移轨道。
The first time that we're going to be live streaming digital video from its spacecraft back down to the Earth from the vicinity of the moon. That's never been done before. What we'll be transmitting live streaming will be lower resolution, more compressed, because we have to fit it into a thinner pipe, if you will. Every one of these cameras is in its position where it is and it's configured the way it is for a very specific reason. We're going to be monitoring anything that we can see with the cameras for spacecraft performance. The imagery teams at NASA are composed of dozens and dozens of very highly trained, very specialized people, engineers, technicians, analysts. If we can see it, we're going to try and keep an eye on it. Imagery has been invaluable throughout the history of NASA. We flew cameras on Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, all of that stuff that we saw with the astronauts around the moon. It helps us detect the unknown unknowns. It allows us to see things that we didn't anticipate happening before. So when we do fly people on Artemis 2, we can have a high confidence that everything is working the way it should.
I love getting a look at those teams that we don't normally see, like the red team that Megan and Kayla just got to interview. A really big thanks to them and everyone that made this liftoff happen tonight. So we are going to toss it back to Megan and Kayla now at KSC. Again, we're about 15 minutes away from perigee raise maneuver.
所以刚才我们听到这个花絮的介绍啊，实际上NASA 也就是美国的太空总署或是所谓的航天局啊，他们其实内部是有监测画面，只是他并没有把这些摄像头跟监测画面是放在这个公共的转播频道上。实际上他们是有机会可以看到这个太空船目前在飞行过程中的一个图像哦。这跟这个我们现在看到 SpaceX 它在发射的转播，或是我们知道这个中国这几年在发射转播上有非常大的不一样啊，给人家感觉今天的转播有一点片段跟断断续续哦，没有办法看到这个航天器它在运行过程中整个相貌是有一点美中不足的地方。
I think Artemis 1 is significant on so many levels. It is a new frontier to do science.
So the primary objective is to test the Orion spacecraft integrated with the Space Launch System.
And it is designed to carry out the boldest of the bold missions.
But it's more than just learning how to travel in space. We're taking a lot of cool science along with us on this first mission to the moon.
So as NASA plans to go back to the surface of the moon and then onto Mars,
we want to spend more time there, and that's riskier business. So the more we learn about the moon itself and the environment where we'll be operating, the better we can prepare. We have 10 CubeSats we call secondary payloads, which are small scientific spacecraft of their own that will each be conducting their own scientific mission.
All of these payloads in some form or fashion will help us going forward. They are going to be studying the moon.
我们刚才前面有说过，今天的转播的重头戏是在发射后的1分1个小时57分，也就是将近2个小时以后SLS 的第二节跟猎户座会分离开啊，这是一个重要的里程碑。另外，在未来发射的第6天，猎户座太空船会飞进月球，最近会只到这个60英里。如果有机会的话，要再次为您直播。如果您感兴趣的话，欢迎您订阅我们的频道。我们将会随时为您更新目前这个 SLS 火箭跟猎户座太空船它飞行的一些最新的状况。
Van Allen belt. So you go beyond the protective magnetic sphere that we have around us. You then get exposed to higher levels of ionizing radiation. So we are flying several space biology experiments.
You will take a series of materials,
plant seeds, fungi, the yeast cell, algae,
and ride along the trip. And then when it comes home, we can analyze how they responded to that environment.
This research will help us thrive in space. It will help us to go further and stay there longer.
In addition to space biology, we'll be learning about how to make astronauts more effective in the Orion in the future. An example of that is something called the Callisto Technology Demonstration.
Lockheed Martin built the Orion spacecraft for NASA, and we'll be flying a secondary payload that's a demonstration payload called Callisto. So we took the technology from Amazon for Alexa and the WebEx technology from Cisco, and so we built a digital assistant, if you will, the custom space-qualified Alexa.
Alexa, how does the life support system work?
Orion's life support system is the environmental control and life support system oracles.
And so this payload is a demonstration mission to show how astronauts in the future could use this technology as an innovative user interface.
So there you have it. I hope you agree with me. This is exciting.
I am just over the moon excited for the Artemis 1 launch.
The science we'll conduct on Artemis 1 lays the groundwork to ensure that we can safely conduct scientific activities at the moon with our astronauts going forward. This really is the stepping stone for us as we take that next giant leap in space exploration.
So a lot of great science also happening on the International Space Station. I got to speak with astronauts Jessica Watkins and Samantha Cristoforetti while they were still on board about the research there that will benefit future Artemis missions. Jessica, Samantha, your primary job on the space station is to
现在在进行转播，我们来切换来看一下另外一个频道飞行器的一些晋升画面。这是这个猎节跟猎户座在飞行途中的一个画面啊，我们可以隐隐约约看到这个太阳能板已经展开了。相信许多人可能都跟我一样啊，有一点难以置信，因为过去这几年或是前面这几个月一直拖拖拉拉，已经延后，我已经算不出多少次了。没想到今天一下子突然这个顺利发射升空啊！明天其实有一个非常有趣的观察点，就是如果大家留心这个有关于金融市场变化的话，可以看一下明天的一些这个太空科技的类股，特别是像是波音啊、洛克希德马丁啊、这些Rocketdyne 啊这些公司。他们明天股价的一个变化，因为今天发射对他们来说是一个很重要的一个里程碑。
perigee is the lowest. Therefore, this perigee raise maneuver is a 10 engine, and it's going to raise the lowest point of Orion's orbit over Earth. This also included a checkout of Orion's systems and any adjustments to the solar arrays. All 4 of those solar arrays, as you can see, are swept back. That's going to keep them from having any loads imparted that might damage them for use later in the mission. This also, the perigee raise maneuver, will put us in the proper position for the translunar injection burn. That's that really big and long burn that we need to send us to the moon. We're about 1 minute away from the perigee raise maneuver. This is a shorter burn. It's less than 30 seconds. About 45 seconds until the perigee raise maneuver.
关键的这个轨道提升。
Coming up on 53 minutes into today's mission, and we are standing by for the start of the perigee raise maneuver. Again, this is a firing of the RL-10 engine on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. It's less than 30 seconds long. And we have confirmation of perigee raise maneuver ignition and full thrust. This is a live view from the spacecraft. Again, a really short burn. We're standing by for the cutoff.
现在画面的是这个真实的传送讯号所传回来的画面，这个是示意图。
And we have confirmation of perigee raise maneuver cutoff. Flight Dynamics Officer reporting on the loops here at Mission Control Houston that it was a good burn. We are now 54 minutes into the flight, Orion traveling 14,700 miles per hour, and that was the perigee raise maneuver, lifting the lowest part of Orion's orbit around the Earth and putting us right where we want to be for the translunar injection burn. We're looking for that translunar injection burn to happen about 1 hour and 26 minutes after launch, so about 30 minutes from now. That'll be that long burn that helps us break free from the pull of Earth's gravity and commits the spacecraft to a lunar trajectory. So with successful completion of the perigee raise maneuver, I'm going to toss it back to Megan at KSC.
刚才你听到现场解说说他们进行轨道高度提升啊，非常顺利在一个升空后1个小时30分左右，也就是1个小时29分27秒。将会再次进行非常关键的18分钟点火，这时候这个第2节以及猎户座会进入这个地月转移轨道，就是往月球飞过去，这是一个非常关键点啊！待会在升空后的1小时30分，大概还有30多分钟以后，要进行关键的18分钟长点火。 关于重要的时间节点哦，这边有一张示意图，大家可以参考一下。也就是说，在1个小时57分之后，也就是将近2个小时的时候，猎户座才会与这个 SLS 火箭的第2节进行分离。那是今天可以说是发射成功与否的一个重要检验点。我们来看这个美国太空总署的署长，也就是航天局的局长接受访问的一个画面。
And that's a camera on a chip that came out of the NASA space program.
That's right.
Absolutely. In addition to those innovative new technologies and the economic impact, I think for me, seeing this launch today, it's so palpable, just that human desire to explore. What do you think about what we're doing to inspire the Artemis and the generations to follow us?
Well, I think all you have to do is walk into a classroom of kids and look how their eyes get big when you start talking about space. And that is going to multiply itself many-fold as we go back to the moon and then on to Mars. It's also going to bring about a new generation of engineers and mathematicians and technologists and scientists, and all the benefits of that additional activity and education coming out of the Artemis generation. Look what that's going to do for our country and our economy, as well as for our international partners. And it's a great day.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Administrator, thank you so much for joining us for this momentous occasion. As you said, this is the beginning of a new age in space exploration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Kayla, that's going to do it for us here at the host desk. Launch was just the first step in a nearly 26-day mission. Our colleagues in Houston will now continue the broadcast to bring you the next big milestone to the moon. From Kayla and me, have a great day, and go Artemis 1.
Go Artemis.
好的，我们现在再切回这个目前在飞行器的画面。
And we had a great ride to orbit today. We are now 1 hour and 2 minutes since we launched. The Artemis 1 mission. Orion is traveling with the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, now almost 15,000 miles per hour. We recently saw the perigee raise maneuver. That's where we lifted the lowest point of Orion's orbit around the Earth, and it puts us in the perfect position to prepare us for translunar injection burn coming up in about 25 minutes.
还有25分钟要进行关键的18分钟长点火，进入地月转移轨道。
So again, we are looking forward to that translunar injection burn. That's what it's going to commit us to our journey to the moon. And to tell us a little bit more about the translunar injection burn, we've got Dan Hewitt standing by to show us on the moon board how it's all going to go down.
"他们要来解释一下，就是说怎么进入这个地月转移轨道。
Hydrogen, oxygen, fueling the RL-10B-2 engine produces about 24,000 pounds of thrust in a vacuum. Now, The translunar injection is what's going to give us the energy to go from low Earth orbit all the way out here. Now, what does that mean? Here comes a really overly simplified orbital mechanics lesson. Let's say you're in orbit around a planet, say Earth, and you're in a nice circular orbit, but you want to have that orbit be even higher. Well, what you can do is fire your engine behind you, increase your speed, and that then increases the corresponding apogee, or the highest point of your orbit, on the other side, and that's how you raise it up. Well, if you wanted to make it into a nice circle, you could follow up and do another burn right here, and that would raise your perigee, or your lowest point, and then you're in a circular orbit around Earth. That's essentially called a Hohmann transfer. If you've ever followed our missions to the space station, that's what we're doing to kind of gradually raise our orbit until we get to the space station. But for this, we're talking about a lot more energy to get somewhere a lot farther away. So what we're essentially doing is we're going to be in this circular orbit around planet Earth, and we are going to be firing that engine with 24,000 pounds of thrust for about 18 minutes. And what that does is it doesn't just increase your apogee by a little, it increases it all the way out, and it's timed. So by the time Orion is hitting its apogee, the highest point of that orbit, the moon will have moved into position that you're entering into its sphere of influence. You're entering into that area where the lunar gravity is going to be able to capture you. And so that's why we're firing the engine for that long. We need to have that much thrust, that much time to get the energy to go out there. So that's the rough orbital mechanics of what we're doing. Now, after that TLI burn is done, the ICPS is going to separate. Its job largely done in the Artemis 1 mission. As we heard, it's got some secondary payloads up in this stage adapter here that it's going to deploy on its way out. The ICPS will have one more burn after TLI called a disposal burn. And what that's going to do is put...
这里他解释就是怎么样绕着地球，然后提升轨道的高度，然后最后是进入地月转移轨道。那他同时也提到，就是说在这个进入地月转移轨道以后，猎户座最后会与这个 SLS 的第二节分离。另外就是在这个分离的这个路途当中还会发射这个多达10枚的立方卫星，等于说是边走边发射卫星，没有闲着可以对未来的这个登月任务进行许多的探测，可以带来很多的帮助。
Thanks, Dan. We are 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 30 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1, now traveling over 15,200 miles per hour. Again, we've recently had the perigee raise maneuver, and in less than 20 minutes now, we'll be looking for the translunar injection burn that Dan just showcased that's going to send us to the moon. But our mission started off with an epic show from the Space Launch System. Again, the Space Launch System is what carried us into orbit today, launching off at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time. And we've got a couple of special guests from Marshall Space Flight Center. We have Bruce Tiller, the Solid Rocket Booster Manager, and Johnny Heflin, the RS-25 Engine Manager, to tell us more about the maiden voyage of the rocket. Now, they both got to watch it live at Kennedy Space Center. So a big hi to you, Bruce and Johnny. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, pleasure to be here.
And can you tell me a little bit about SLS performance today? Did it perform as you expected?
Go ahead, Bruce.
You want me to start?
Go ahead.
Sure. So I manage the booster part of the rocket, and the boosters were fantastic. They performed just as we expected. We got to see some of the data. Obviously, the team hadn't plotted it all, but the pressures looked great. you know, it burned for just the right amount of time.
左边这位是这个助推器的专案经理哦，右边这个是核心段引擎的这个专案经理。
Similar story for RS-25. Nominal, what we call nominal performance. The engines performed exactly as predicted. Based on the quick look data. Like the booster, we've got a lot of data to look at, but so far the data looks really, really good. These historic RS-25s that have 25 flights between them on coming off the shuttle program. So really looking forward to getting a look at the data. It looks really good so far.
That's fantastic, and we agree. It was amazing to monitor here, and the loops were very quiet in Mission Control Houston. That was a good sign. You knew that things were going well. So we know that the launch abort system was inactive for this mission, but it will be active for when we have crew on board for Artemis 2. Are there any other differences we can expect to see in the rocket for Artemis 2?
So for the boosters, by and large, no. If I talk about the boosters from top to bottom, we are going to make one change though, because of the crew is on it. We're going to have a delay timer in there so that if for some reason they need to abort, we have a few seconds there before, after they abort, before the termination system destroys the rocket. So we will add that, but other than that, nope, these boosters will be the same. Second flight is the first.
Same story for RS-25. It will be the next set of 4 heritage engines from the shuttle program. Configuration-wise, they'll be the same as what we flew today.
主持人特别问这2位专案经理哦，就是说在阿提米斯2号任务将会进行载人，载人以后他们不会在月球降落，他们只是绕月球环绕飞行然后回来。但是因为有人员在上面跟没有人员在上面，究竟有什么不一样的地方？2位专案经理解释，基本上大致相同。不过在这个脱离这个因为状况必须要摧毁火箭的时候，会多几秒钟，以方便这个人员逃生。
Super busy as well. We have the Artemis 2 engines have already been delivered to MAF, and they're on schedule to be installed in the Artemis 2 core stage in mid-January. We're also about to start the certification test series for the new RS-25 engines that we're building. We have heritage engines for the first 4 flights. Beyond that, coming in on Artemis 5, we will fly what we call the RS-25 restart engines that have been redesigned to reduce cost and reestablish manufacturing for future flights.
前面几次的这个阿提米斯任务所用的这个核心段引擎哦，主要是从旧的太空梭上面拆下来使用。不过未来随着这个旧引擎用罄以后，那用新以后，然后会制造新的引擎，同时设计新形态的引擎，来方便未来使用。
All right, and we are now 1 hour and 12 minutes into the flight of Artemis 1. We are traveling at orbital velocity. Again, Orion is currently attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, which recently performed the perigee raise maneuver. And we are standing by for translunar injection burn, now less than 15 minutes away. It's going to be about an 18-minute burn that will commit us to the moon. Part of the Artemis program's goal is to inspire the next generation of dreamers and explorers. So we want to show you what students are doing right now to bring the Artemis missions to life.
NASA's Artemis mission will land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon.
And today's students are the Artemis generation.
If you're a student, you can design and build technologies that support the Artemis mission with NASA's Artemis student challenges.
No matter your background or experience,
you're invited to choose a challenge that interests you, whether it's
rockets.
这是目前在飞行途中飞行的画面，可以看到这个太阳能板已经全面展开哦。现在在等待，在1小时29分，也就是在1小时半左右的时候，要进行关键性的18分钟点火。
Again, 1 hour and 13 minutes, 30 seconds since liftoff today. We are looking towards translunar injection burn, now about 13 minutes away. That's going to send us to the moon. But did you know that you were invited to fly on the first Artemis mission too? Earlier this year, NASA asked the public to create a pass to virtually board Orion. Anyone who signed up got to include their name on a flash drive. I know my name is on there, and that flash drive is on Orion right now for its journey around the moon. It has more than 3.3 million names. The Orion spacecraft is designed to carry 4 crew members to lunar orbit, which we're preparing for on Artemis 2. NASA astronaut Randy Bresnik brought us through the hatch of the vehicle to show us where those future crew members will live and work during their journey.
Science and camera equipment, and even the tools necessary to perform repairs if required. On the upper part of the crew compartment, or what we call the overhead, is the docking compartment, a crucial component to future exploration. It allows crews to dock the Orion capsule to Gateway, NASA's next generation lunar outpost. Once they dock, crews will have the ability to board the lunar landers also attached to the Gateway and then head down to the surface of the moon. Through these windows, the 4 crew members will have amazing front row seats of their journey to and from the moon. Do you remember Apollo 8 and Bill Anders' famous photo of Earthrise as they came around the moon and saw it for the first time? Imagine being one of those first crew members on Orion, having their own modern-day Earthrise, and knowing they are traveling farther from Earth than humans have ever traveled before. Thanks to thousands of people from across the country and around the world who have helped with the research, design, construction, testing, and more testing. My fellow astronauts and I know that whoever gets selected for future Artemis missions, they're going to have the journey of a lifetime on board the spectacular vehicle we call Orion.
We're now coming up on 10 minutes until the translunar injection burn. Again, Orion is still attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. That RL-10 engine is what's going to perform the burn for us. But to hear more about Orion, I'm going to send it back to Dan at the moon board to tell us all about our spacecraft.
Hey, thanks, Leah. Welcome back to the moon board and Orion. So it's still attached to ICPS, still flying on the very upper part of SLS, but pretty soon it's going to be flying free. And after that happens, it's going to take over all of the propulsion, all of the flying, everything for the rest of the mission. And so to talk a little bit more about propulsion, let's focus in on this, the European Service Module. So this is what's going to be doing all of our maneuvers after we're done with ICPS and the translunar injection burn. And it's going to be doing that with a mix of 3 different types of engines. First one here on the bottom is the Large Orbital Maneuvering System engine. This one produces about 6,000 pounds of thrust. That's going to be doing a lot of your really major pushing maneuvers when we get into the powered flybys, the insertion into distant retrograde orbit, the burns to start sending us back home. That's the one that's really applying the most force. It can also gimbal, which essentially means it can swivel around, and that can help your steering. It's helped out by these 8 auxiliary thrusters. They're in pairs. Those are a little bit smaller. Each one of those produces about 105 pounds of thrust each, but they add some additional push to that orbital maneuvering system engine. And then we also have 24 reaction control system thrusters, these smaller ones that you can see all around Orion. Those are used for a lot of attitude control, so again, they can help which way you're pointing, but also small translational maneuvers, so moving side to side, up, down, those can be called into play. Now, all of those engines share a common fuel source. They're using what are called hypergolic fuels, a mix of a fuel and an oxidizer, in this case monomethylhydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide. Now, those are long names, and they're hypergolic fuels. What does that mean? A hypergolic fuel essentially means you take your fuel and your oxidizer, you put them together, you get a reaction. You get an exothermic reaction, which creates that thrust, which comes out. You don't need an ignition source like we have on SLS, which is using oxygen and hydrogen. They're extremely reliable. They're very stable. You don't have to store them at cryogenic temperatures, which is really necessary for smaller spacecraft in orbit because it takes a tremendous amount of electrical energy just to keep fuels that cold. And so we can store them at a much closer to room temperature, essentially, when they're on board this spacecraft. So that's all of the primary propulsion that's going to take over. And again, that's going to be after we get through translunar injection. We're going to be doing correction burns on the way out, a number around the moon as we hang out in distant retrograde orbit for about a week, and then eventually sending us on the way back home. But still attached to ICPS right now, going to detach shortly after that burn is complete, and then Orion will be flying free, the service module pushing it for the rest of the way. So with that, I'll send it back over to Leah as we get closer to that TLI burn.
Thank you, Dan. And yes, indeed, we are looking for TLI coming up in about 7 minutes from now. Again, that's it's a long burn for us, about 18 minutes long. But before we get to that milestone, I have a friend of mine here. It's Stu McClung, the Program Planning and Control Office Chief of Staff for the Orion program. Stu, I am so glad that you could join us today.
Thank you. Good morning. Good to be here.
So how is the spacecraft performing so far, and what's next?
So far so well. Good. We were clean during the pre-launch and ascent. So the team's down the hall in the MER taking a look, working everything. It looks good so far, so that's good. And of course, we got the burn coming. After the burn, we'll start ticking through all of our planned events. Like we have a the SAW modal survey. The wings will have a modal survey that we'll do later this morning. One of the first DTOs that we'll take a look at and evaluate how they react.
So DTO, designated test objective. What's another one of those that we'll be looking at over the next 26 days?
We have probably a good 100 of them. They, culminate from everything from like the modal survey to how the cooling system behaves, common track system. On entry day, one of our major test objectives is looking at how the heat shield and how it handles entry heating.
So how does it feel to be here today and see the future of human space exploration unfold?
It's great. I was doing my shift in the MER earlier today. Haven't slept. The emotion and the adrenaline's got me going. It's great to be a part of this. It's great watching watching the KSC team execute, and now this is day one for us. We've got 26 days for our team to execute now, and we'll go do our job and set the stage for future Artemis exploration.
And we're excited. We're going to be here along the way for all those major milestones, burns, all the other exciting events that we are looking forward to. So thank you so much for joining us here. We are really excited. A big congrats to you and your team.
Thanks. Let's go have a good burn and let's go to the moon.
Let's do it. We are now less than 5 minutes away from the translunar injection burn. Again, this is the burn that's going to send us around the moon, going to commit us to a lunar trajectory. It is approximately an 18-minute burn. It's a firing of that RL-10 engine on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. You've got a view here of the White Flight Control Room in Mission Control Houston. This is where all of the teams will be monitoring the mission over the next 26 days. Teams monitored launch tonight. There are, of course, several different shifts that'll be working here. All right, we are coming up now on about 3 minutes until the translunar injection burn. Again, this is about an 18-minute long burn. Firing of the RL-10 engine on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage commits us to lunar trajectory. It helps us break free from the gravitational pull of Earth. In case you missed it, in June of this year, we launched Capstone, a small satellite launched from New Zealand designed to test a unique lunar orbit for our future space station around the moon called Gateway. And just 2 days ago, Capstone arrived at its intended orbit around the moon. So we're very excited for that milestone. It really helps pave the way for our future Artemis missions. Coming up on 2.5 minutes into the translunar injection burn, and we're now traveling over 18,000 miles per hour. Again, that speed is going to increase as well. This is really going to push Orion toward the moon. And we are now 252,400 miles away from the moon. We also have one preparing to study an asteroid. The Near-Earth Asteroid Scout, or NEA Scout, by Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama will travel by solar sail to a near-Earth asteroid to take pictures of and make other characterizations of its surface. There's a CubeSat on board studying Earth called Equuleus by the University of Tokyo, along with JAXA in Japan. Equuleus stands for Equilibrium Lunar Earth Point 6U spacecraft and will travel to Lagrange Point 2, imaging Earth's plasmasphere for a better understanding of our planet's radiation environment. since we launched Orion, and the ICPS now traveling at over 21,400 miles per hour. And as I promised, we continue to grow closer to the moon, now 249,000 miles away. and 1 hour 44 minutes since launch today.
现在发射已经有1个小时44分，距离1小时57分的火箭跟猎户座分离越来越接近。
Away from the expended stage, Orion continues on an outbound path to the moon, and the Orion stage adapter attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will deliver several small payloads over several deployments. We're now over 1 hour 51 minutes since launch today from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Orion is traveling attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, but not for much longer. We look for that separation to happen in about 5 minutes. At that point, Orion will still be flying attached to the service module, and in this animation, you can see the service module directly below the capsule. Those solar array wings are deployed. The spacecraft now traveling over 20,570 miles per hour, continuing to increase its distance from Earth, now over 1,780 miles away, continuing to decrease its distance from the Moon, 245,150 miles away. Hearing confirmation from teams here in Mission Control Houston that the solar arrays are in their proper configuration for interim cryogenic propulsion stage separation. Again, we just saw the translunar injection burn, a successful approximately 18-minute burn that has helped Orion break free from the pull of Earth's gravity and sending us toward the Moon. We're now standing by for separation from that stage now that it has done its job for Orion. However, it still has a job to do. It will help eject some CubeSats that will help us study the Moon, Earth, and the space environment. Orion now traveling at 19,700 miles per hour, 2,270 miles away from Earth. We're expecting that stage separation to happen in about a minute.
距离这个猎户座脱离只有1分半，刚才他们已经完成。哇，我们看到已经脱离了。哇，这是成功点火脱离的画
As
面。
you can see, we have confirmation of interim cryogenic propulsion stage from Orion. With the Earth in the background and the Moon is our destination, Artemis generation, we are going.
似乎比这个预定的时间有提早。现在猎户座跟这个欧洲打造的这个服务舱仍然连结，是往这个月球的方向前进。等一下，我们等指挥中心确认，今天的直播就会在这里告一段落。在这个飞行的第6天， 猎户座会接近月球，只有这个60英里的近距离啊。我们计划进行直播。如果您继续关心 SLS 火箭的发射跟猎户座的运行，可以订阅我们的频道，我们将为您传递与太空科学相关的最新讯息。
It's been 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 40 seconds since Orion launched atop the SLS from Kennedy Space Center in Florida at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time. After a smooth ride to orbit, a perigee raise maneuver, and a translunar injection burn conducted by the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, Orion is now flying free, attached to the European service module and on its journey to the moon. That might be the end of today's broadcast, but the Artemis 1 mission has only just begun. We'll continue live coverage for major milestones, including the outbound powered flyby and other major burns. But when we're not live, you can check out blogs.nasa.gov/Artemis and the NASA newsletter for updates on the spacecraft. We're also excited to introduce Artemis All Access. It's a short video product that will provide updates about mission accomplishments with a look at what's to come, as well as inside looks and explainers about the mission. And if you want to stay updated on mission activities and how to watch splashdown, you can still register as an online mission participant with NASA's virtual guest program to stay informed as the mission progresses. Virtual mission participants for Artemis 1 will receive curated resource and mission activities straight to their inbox. You can register at go.nasa.gov/